I have a 2014 Rpod 178 by Forest River. This model Rpod is great because it has a large bed in the back and a dinette that turns into a large bed for the front. Great for someone like me with 2 kids. But what it does not have is storage. It has very little storage space for food or plates or bowls or stuff like that. It doesn't even have storage for clothes, but that's another story. Not just in the 178, but in most of the older Rpods with the slide-out kitchen, there is a small cabinet over the sink area, but it's so small that you can't even put plates in there laying flat. I remembered seeing someone make this cabinet bigger on the Rpod owners forum, so I decided to give it a try. In this little video I took before getting started, you can see that the cabinet is not even really a cabinet. It's just a bottom and a front screwed to the top of the kitchen slide that forms sort of a box when in place. You can also see some of the screws that hold it in place. Don't worry about the electrical outlet there. It will not be affected by the mod. The first thing I did was to remove the light underneath to be used later on in the modified cabinet. I also removed the trim pieces and the large piece of Luan and found more screws holding the cabinet in place. I was careful not to mess up the trim pieces because they will be reused, but the Luan was not going to be reused, so no big deal if that gets messed up. Now I was ready to take it down. I removed the screws that were inside the cabinet first. Then I realized that I needed to remove 2 screws from the microwave compartment, which requires removal of the microwave, but mine was already removed. Finally, I removed the screws underneath, and the whole thing came loose in one piece. Then I removed the screws holding the front of the cabinet to the bottom and got them separated. All the screws will be reused later. Now, it was easy to see that the only thing I needed to do to make the cabinet bigger was to make the bottom bigger. Everything else would stay the same. So I took the bottom apart. I would be able to reuse the long pieces of wood framing because the width of the cabinet would be the same, only the depth of it would increase. Lots of staples and wood splinters. Now I went to the hardware store and got 3/4 inch square wood dowels, the same size as the original frame, and a sheet of the thinnest Luan they had. I also picked up some L brackets to make the frame sturdy. Here you can see how much bigger the new bottom is going to be. Basically doubled it. But make sure that you don't go too big or it will not fit in the slide area. I cut the 4 new longer dowel pieces and rebuilt the frame using the existing long wood frame dowels, the L brackets, and the small screws that were included with the L brackets. I drilled holes in the frame so the light wires could pass through the frame, then tested to make sure that it would fit. I decided to prime and paint the entire area of the slide out because it always felt really dark there to me. Now I had to measure and cut the larger pieces of Luan that would form the bottom of the cabinet and the piece that goes underneath. I primed and painted those two. I took the piece of Luan that would form the bottom surface of the cabinet and attached it to the frame with finishing nails. Now it's time to put it back together. I screwed the new bottom and the front back to each other first so I'd be able to install the whole thing at once. Once I got it held up in place and got a screw or 2 in it, it was easy to get the rest of the screws secured. It looked like this. Next, I had to put the bottom Luan on. But first I had to decide where I wanted the light to go and drilled a small hole for the wires to go through. At this point, I realized I needed to lengthen the wires to the light just a little bit. I used some extra wire I had using butt connectors. You might not have to add any wire depending on how much slack Forest River gave you. With that done, I nailed the Luan on with some finishing nails. Next, I put the little trim pieces on with finishing nails and reinstalled the light. The cabinet seems cavernous now. It's much brighter. I toyed with the idea of adding a light inside the cabinet, but decided against it, and I'm glad I did. Painting it a bright color was enough to make it easy to see in there. The project was not that hard, and I'm not a carpenter by any stretch. Hope this helps. Happy camping, everyone.